Hey guys, welcome. Glad to have you guys here today. And it looks like I advanced things a little bit too much. I already have quite a few people here. There was about 30 people that were waiting before I started the stream. So welcome. Let me get my clock started. So my intention today is to go about 45 minutes like we did last week. If I can get my phone to stay up. You guys, you laugh at everything that's going on behind the scenes. I got my phone over here with the timer. I've got another computer over here with the questions, a light shining in my face. So anyways, hi guys. So we've got people here already. I like to just double check to make sure everybody can hear me okay. So let me know if I sound all right, and looks like the video is running pretty good. So just let me know if there's any problems. And welcome. So let's see, while we're kind of waiting, we had about 85 people that had registered for the webinar. So as we kind of wait, we're up to almost 40 already. So tell me where you're from, what your garden zone is, and how cold it gets there. We've got people from Georgia, Sarah, looks like South Jersey. We've got New Jersey, Ontario, Dawson Springs, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ontario again, North Carolina. Madeline, who I know, is saying that everything sounds good. Alabama, awesome. It's fun how many places we get with these live streams, so pretty fun. Okay, we'll kind of hang out here just for another minute and kind of read the feed. So today, guys, we're going to be talking about growing spinach. And for those of you that are new to these live streams, I'm going to leave some time at the end for answering questions. And so if you have questions, my assistant is upstairs right now, and she'll be keeping track of all of the different questions that we have as we go through. I am going to wait till the end to answer questions, just because I've found that if I stop in the middle of my presentation to answer a question, I end up going way off on a tangent, and it will be here way longer than I want to. So we'll kind of hold all of the questions till the end, but my assistant is going to keep track of them. So as we're going through, if you have a question about something that I'm talking about, put it down in the feed, and she will pop that into this other computer that I have, and then we'll answer those questions towards the end. All right, who else do we have here? I know I've already missed a bunch. We're up to 50 plus viewers already. Massachusetts, Arizona, Texas, New Jersey again, Kentucky, Iowa, Illinois, Ontario, MS. Is that Mississippi? Sorry, Combat Pro, I can't remember where you're from. I've seen you before. Illinois, Louisiana. Awesome. Okay. All right, guys, we're about 3 minutes in, and we're up to almost about 60 viewers, so let's kind of get moving along. Now, some of you guys have been here before. Others won't know who I am, and so we'll kind of do a little bit of a kind of an introduction as to what's going to go on today. So let me make myself a little bit smaller, and so we'll go about 5 minutes. So if you're watching this on the replay and you want to skip this part, you can jump ahead about 5 minutes, and we'll be maybe more like 3 minutes, and we'll be to the actual stuff, okay? All right, so first thing I want to remind you guys is to hang around till the end. There's an opportunity for you to sign up for a free course, my free year-round mini course. We're working our way into the launch of our master course for year-round gardening, and that course will be on sale starting next week on Tuesday. But I'm not actually selling you anything today, so I don't have like a sales offer or anything at the end, just this free course. So if you guys are interested, down in the link, first link in the description is a link to the course that you can go and sign up for. And it's about a 45-minute course on year-round gardening, kind of some basics of what you need to be doing there if you want to be growing in the fall and the winter. So today, in particular, we are going to be talking about winter spinach. And we're going to cover how we can grow spinach for possibly as much as 6 to 8 months worth of harvest. Depends on where you live. Believe it or not, the colder you are, the longer your harvest will be, versus those of you that live in some of the warmer zones. it's a little bit harder for you guys to grow spinach as long. So yeah, there we go. Really quick, well, since we're still kind of going and not doing the questions, do we have to be on social media to take the master class? No, you do not. I do have a Facebook group, but we're going to do the Q&A sessions this year on Zoom instead of in the Facebook group, so you don't need to be on social media to be part of that group, okay? All right, the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about when to plant your spinach, how much to plant, when to harvest, and how to protect it over the winter so that we can get those big, long harvests, okay? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So today's class is not for container gardeners, okay? So winter, when we're talking about winter gardening, containers don't hold up well in the winter unless you live in like zones 8, 9, or 10. Then it's a totally different scenario. But if you live in zone 7 or below where it gets really cold in the wintertime, then we have to watch out for containers because they freeze too quickly, and so everything you're growing will freeze too quickly. So today's class not really for container gardeners. Not to kick you out if you want to stay. I'd love to have you. You do need some significant space. My recommendation for growing spinach for fall and winter is at least a 4 by 8 foot bed. You also, if you really want to get the most out of what you're going to be learning today, you'll want to consider either a hoop house or a cold frame. And then what we're going to be talking about will be focused a lot on the cold winter zones today. But if you live in the warmer zones like 9 and 10, there's still quite a bit that you're going to learn from this. And then I will be making an offer. It just happens to be a free offer, and I will talk to you a little bit about the master class at the end. If that offends you, then you're not in the right workshop, because I'm going to give you about 20-25 minutes worth of free stuff, and then I do have an offer for you that of course you can take or leave. But just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that. Okay? All right, so who am I? Let me turn off the picture of me so you can see the picture of me. My name is Rick Stone, and I am the founder of the Gardening Academy, and I am also the principal author of Our Stoney Acres, which is our website, which if you guys haven't been over to the website recently, you should jump over there and take a look, because we have been working hard, especially my wife AJ has really been working hard to upgrade things. We've kind of cleaned out a lot of the older stuff and consolidated, and we've got a really lot of good gardening related stuff over there, so you should go check that out. Also, while you're at it, make sure that you subscribe to my channel today. So if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, we just broke 80,000 subscribers yesterday, which is amazing. Totally cool. Last week's workshop, we had 6,000 people that ended up watching it over the last 6 days. So very, very cool, guys. That's awesome of you. So make sure you subscribe and go follow us on Instagram as well. We're doing a lot of fun stuff there, and there's a link for the Instagram down below. I am a master gardener, and I have been since 2012, so coming up on 10 years. I started taking the class 10 years ago right now, and I have been gardening for 23 plus years. I need to update that slide because it's more like 25 now. So there we go. Let's see, what else do we have going on in the chat here before we begin? We're up to 60 plus people, so cool. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, I kind of want to honor your guys' time, and I promised about 45 minutes, so we'll try and keep it to that. So I'm going to go for about 20 minutes teaching you guys about growing spinach in the fall and how we can do that. And then towards the end, we'll talk a little bit more about some other crops that will do the same things. But this is what we're going to talk about today: planting at the right time, protecting from pests, planting a big bed, when to harvest. Then we're going to talk about row covers, hoop houses, and cold frames, and then we'll cover those other crops that kind of work the same way as spinach. So, okay, so we'll go about 20 minutes, and then I will have some time for questions towards the end. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me turn myself off so you can see the pictures. This is a picture of our spinach from a couple of years ago in our cold frame. So that's kind of what the wood is that you're seeing there is the cold frame that we set over the top. Planting for spinach is usually done in the fall about 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost. Okay, so it's important that you know when your first frost is. If you don't know, my recommendation for a website to figure that out is called Morning Chores. So if you just Google morning chores frost dates, it will take you to their page. You can put your zip code in, and that will give you a rough estimate of when your first fall frost is. And then you're going to use that to kind of do a little bit of a calculation to figure out when in the late summer you should be planting for both fall and winter harvest. Okay, so these dates that we're talking about, this planting is actually going to last you during the fall and then all the way through the winter as well. Okay, so for example, our first frost date here in, we're just south of Salt Lake City, Utah, is October 1st. Okay, so that means that we start planting our spinach somewhere between August 1st and August 15th. That's kind of the range for us. It'll be different for all of you, which is why I want you to go find your frost date. That's also why we are talking about fall and winter spinach in July, okay? Because if you live, like for example, today I had a conversation with somebody over the YouTube messaging system, and that person lived in zone 4, and their first frost date was September 15th. Well, they could be starting to plant their fall crop of spinach as early as July 15th in her area, and and even somewhere between July 15th and August 1st. So you got to be planning on this kind of stuff now if you want to have a successful crop. You can't wait until October to plant spinach, because anything you plant that late is not going to really do anything until the spring, if it survives the winter at all. Okay. Now, if you want to get a spring harvest going, then you're usually looking about 4 weeks before your last frost date. So for us, last frost date is about May 15th, which means mid-April we're targeting for planting spinach outside. If you have a cold frame or a hoop house, you can add an extra 8 weeks to that. So you could be about 8 weeks before your last frost in the spring. Okay, and we're going to have a little bit of a combination. Our fall planting is usually going to last about 6 months, and so if you want to get that 8 months out of it, then you'll need to do some planting in the spring as well. Okay, so that is our target planting times. All right, pests. I'm going to turn this off for a second. We have a lot of bugs in the summertime that we're not used to having in the spring when it comes to spinach. Okay, and so I have found that the most effective way, better than sprays, better than anything else, is to use fabric row cover. And so I actually brought some for you so I could show you. So this is a light fabric row cover. So you can see, you can actually kind of see me through this. It's a fairly lightweight one. So we're not talking the heavies, and I brought some heavy fabric row cover too. And look at the difference. You can see the difference between it. It's much thicker and heavier. For pest protection, we want this thin stuff. Okay, so we want this thin, light fabric row cover because this is a disadvantage of it. It gets holes, but it will still let the sunshine and the water through, which is what we need while those plants are growing. Okay, so if you'll put some fabric row cover over your spinach, your kale, your everything that you're planting in the fall, you're going to just have a much better crop because it's going to keep the pests out, like the aphids and the white flies. And we have a terrible problem with leaf miners in our area that can just ruin a spinach crop in a matter of a couple of weeks. And so if you cover with that fabric row cover, you're going to throw it over your bed really just as soon as it starts to germinate. As soon as you start to see that spinach come up, throw that fabric row cover over. It's actually going to provide a nice kind of protected environment for, even in the heat, it's going to provide some protection. It's going to kind of keep the moisture in a little bit better. I have found that my plants just grow better, and then it keeps those pests out. And you do have to kind of weight things down with some rocks or something like that. But since I started using fabric row cover to protect my fall crops, it has just made a world of difference in the pest problems and the pest issues that we've had. Okay. All right, now plant a lot is my next suggestion. So as you are planning for your year-round spinach bed, I would plan on at least a 4 by 8 foot bed. okay? The reason why is because you're going to put a lot of effort into this, okay? You're going to, you have to baby. It's hotter in the fall, so it's a little bit harder to get things to germinate. You're going to have to do a lot more watering. You're going to have to do a lot of babying of these plants. And so it's effort, and you need to make it worth your while. And if you really want that harvest to last for 6 months or more, then you need to have some significant space, okay? So in the past, we have done just one 4x8 foot bed, but for the last 2 years, we've actually done a 4x8 foot bed, and then we've done a separate bed that we've planted half to spinach and half to other things, whether it's kale or lettuce or whatever. So we end up having 12 by 4 feet of spinach, and that extra 4 feet made all the difference in how often we can harvest and everything like that. So kind of think about your family size, and how much you're going to be eating spinach. The nice thing about spinach in the winter, the fall and the winter is even when it gets big, it's nice and sweet. Okay, so the starches get turned into sugars, like many of our vegetables do when things are cold. And so that, even the bigger leaves that normally you would think, oh, those are cooking leaves, you're not going to put them in a salad, even those leaves are yummy and sweet during the wintertime. And so the more you have, the more you're going to eat. So think about your family. We have 4 people still at home here, and that 4 by 12 feet of spinach gives us basically all the spinach that we want. And we don't eat spinach every day during the wintertime, but it gives us all that we want during the wintertime. So make sure that you plan on some space, okay? All right, harvesting. Let's talk a bit about harvesting. So you're going to start harvesting your spinach about 8 to 10 weeks after you have planted, okay? And the reason why you're going to wait so long, normally spinach would be up and to the baby stage in about 6 weeks, and you could start eating it if you wanted to. But you've got so much else that time of the year. So think about it. If you're doing this sometime in August, that you're starting these plantings, you're going to be looking at the end of middle of September, end of September, somewhere around there. There's still going to be quite a bit of stuff happening in your garden, unless you live in the really cold zones. But even in our garden with a October 1st frost date, we still have tomatoes, we still have zucchini growing, our potatoes are just coming out. So we have lots and lots of stuff. And so we don't worry about harvesting that spinach until the patch really gets established and looking really good. So 8 to 10 weeks after. So for us, August 1st planting date, we're really not worrying about harvesting that spinach until about October 15th is when we'll start harvesting, okay? And then you want to harvest the biggest leaves first. And like I say, because things are cooling off so much, those big leaves are nice and tasty, just like the baby leaves would be, okay? You're harvesting, you're gonna have a really good harvest in the fall. The dead of winter is when you are going to have the slowest harvest, which is why we like to plant a lot, so that there's plenty there for us to get and to harvest. So dead of winter, and for me, dead of winter is kind of about Christmas until President's Day, basically. So about 25th of December till about the 15th of February. That time of year, it's a little bit harder to get out in the garden to harvest because we're covered in snow a lot of the time. And so that's kind of the time when you're harvesting the slowest. But if you do it right, and you get yourself some access to those cold frames so that you can kind of dig them out, even during that dead time of the year, you are going to have plenty that you can harvest, okay? Then you need to plan on a big rush in the spring. And so you need to keep that in your head as you're thinking about what you're eating, because come middle of March, for most of us, that spinach is just going to take off and grow like mad, okay? It'll start growing mid-February, but middle of March, it's just going to go crazy. And so you need to be eating it fast, because it's going to get, those plants are going to get big, and then they're going to want to bolt and go to seed. And so you just need to eat and eat and eat, okay? So plan on a big rush in the spring. And then when we're talking about harvesting in the wintertime, one thing that I did want to warn you about is that you need to make sure that you only harvest on sunny days, okay? So the spinach needs to be warm basically. If you were to harvest frozen spinach and bring it in, it'll turn to mush, okay? But if you harvest spinach that has been frozen and then thawed on the plant, it'll be fine. Things are funny that way. Almost all the leafy greens that you grow in the wintertime are that way. So make sure that you harvest them when they're thawed out. So if you've got a spell where your temperatures at night are in the negatives and you're really not warming up during the day, just leave your cold frames alone and let them be until things warm up a little bit. Because if you try to harvest that stuff while it's frozen, it's just not gonna taste good. It's just gonna turn to mush. Okay. All right. So now we have to talk about how we are going to protect your crop. Okay. So we have a couple of different options here. So let me turn myself off here so that you can see. This is one of our cold frames, and you can see that we have up here at the top of the picture, you can see some of that fabric row cover. And let me bring the heavy fabric row cover back up here. Buried it back here. So this heavy fabric row cover actually protects a lot, okay? So it really does protect quite a bit, sometimes as much as 6 to 8 degrees of protection. And so for a lot of you that live in the warmer zones, so people that live in zones 8 and even 9, you know, where you will occasionally get some frost, all you really need to protect your spinach in the wintertime is a fabric row cover, okay? If you live in zone 7 and you happen to be a pretty mild zone 7, so a zone where you'll just occasionally get really cold weather, but most of the time it's fairly mild, then a row cover might be okay for you as well. But for those of you that live in zones 3 through 6, you're going to use the row cover as added protection inside your hoop houses or your cold frames. But a row cover isn't going to protect spinach all the way through the wintertime by itself in those colder zones. You know, those of us that get down, you know, into the teens and even the single digits as our nighttime temperatures, and below that, you're going to need more protection than just the fabric row cover. But they're going to be handy. So even if you live in zones 3 through 6, I want you to buy some heavy fabric row cover. Now, where is it available? You ought to be able to find some at your local nurseries. If not, you can order it online. Amazon has a bunch of them, but you're looking for heavy fabric row cover. So it's going to say something like frost blanket or protects to up to 8 degrees or something like that. We're not looking for this thin stuff. We don't want the thin stuff to protect from frost, because this is great for just light frost and bugs, but this does not protect deeply in the wintertime. So we want that heavy fabric row cover, and everybody is going to benefit from that. You know, everybody from zones 3 all the way up to zone 8 are going to benefit from that. And even, you know, our 9 and 10 people that have the crazy occasional frost may want to do something like that as well. Okay. All right, next is a hoop house, and I apologize, I didn't have time to change. I don't know what happened to this picture. It kind of broke down. It looks like maybe it was snowing or something when I took this picture. I love mini hoop houses because they're so easy to put up, so inexpensive. If you guys are more interested in those and how to build them and things like that, then either the free year-round gardening course or the master course is a great option for you, because I talk a lot about hoop houses. But basically a hoop house is 3 or 4 ribs made out of PVC pipe with a ridge pole that runs along the top to kind of stabilize everything. And then you cover it up with plastic. And there's all kinds of different ways that you can do it really inexpensively. You know, like the one you're seeing here in this picture cost me about $25 total to build. And I have a fancier one now that's on hinges, and it was still only about $35. That was before the surge in lumber prices, so it might be a little bit more than that now, because I used a couple of 2x4s, but you know, fairly inexpensive to build. So hoop houses, where do they protect and work the best? So in zone 8, a hoop house would be nice to have. Okay, it would help things out. It would help you to be able to grow a lot more spinach and a lot more things during the winter time, but it's not 100% necessary for those of you in zone 8. Okay, in zone 7, a hoop house is probably all that you really need. Okay, now you can go with a cold frame, which we'll talk about cold frames next, but zone 7, a hoop house with some added row cover is probably all that you will need, okay, to pull off this winter spinach thing. In zone 6, you might be okay. It depends on how severe of a zone 6 you are. You know, if the zones are determined by how cold it gets, and so if you just kind of occasionally dip down to that level, then you might be okay with a hoop house. But usually in zone 6, a hoop house is kind of right on the edge as to whether you're going to actually be able to preserve things all winter long in a hoop house. Okay, if you live in zones 3, 4, and 5, hoop house is not going to be enough. We are going to talk about instead a cold frame for you guys. Okay, so for those of you like in zones 6 and 7 that are going to use a hoop house, I still want you to buy some of that fabric row cover, because that heavy fabric row cover is going to help you when it gets really cold. So, you know, during the year, you know when it is. For us, it's in January. You're going to have a really cold spell where things really get frigid for a while. And you want to throw some extra protection inside that hoop house. So you're going to throw a fabric row cover over the top of your crops, and it'll be protected by the fabric row cover and by the hoop house. So you'll still want to have that, okay? All right, last option for protecting your crops is a cold frame. And cold frames are the Cadillac of season extension. They're the kind of the best way to protect things. They are for sure more expensive to build, especially with today's lumber prices. And all the plexiglass. Last year, I couldn't even find plexiglass because of all the COVID stuff that was going on. I think that's settled down a little bit, but lumber prices are still a little high. So the cold frames that I have, and let me, you know, here again, you're actually looking at 2 cold frames that are sitting side by side here. And those 2 cold frames combined cost me about $300. But with today's lumber prices, I would imagine you're probably looking at more like $400 to $450 for 2 of those. So you're probably looking at about $200 to $225 a piece to build a cold frame. But basically a cold frame is just a box with some type of glass lid, okay? And so you can go with cheaper options. I've seen people that have done it with straw bales and an old storm door, you know, something like that. So there are inexpensive ways to come up with a cold frame. Mine are made out of dimensional lumber, and then we have plexiglass as the glass tops, and each of the cold frames has 4 glass tops that can go on and off, and these are great for zones 3 through 6. Okay, we love our cold frames. We're able to grow a whole big variety of winter crops throughout the winter, even though, you know, and you know, in zone 6 we don't get as cold as zone 3. Obviously, you know, we just don't. But we'll get down to 0 and sometimes below. And I've had all of my winter crops survive, you know, temperatures that low. And I know people that grow in those, even the colder zones, zones 3 and 4, that don't have a problem if they have a cold frame and then they add that fabric row cover to it. Okay, so that is a great way to protect your crops. Okay, so all of these, let me see if I've got, okay, all of these efforts combined, so choosing the right planting date for your area, harvesting at the right time, and making sure that you protect your crops from pests in the fall and the late summer, and then protecting them with a fabric row cover, a hoop house, or a cold frame, combined should get you a pretty long harvest of spinach during the wintertime. Okay, so we start harvesting our spinach about the 15th of October, and we usually, it's usually somewhere between April 15th and May 15th, depending on the spring. If we have a hot spring, then that spinach will tend to bolt and go to seed. But if we have a cooler spring, there's been years where we've harvested all the way till about May 15th. So that's 7 months that we get from that one planting. And then if you add on top of that planting, you know, in the spring somewhere else in a different location, you can have 8, you know, plus months of harvest of spinach, which, you know, spinach is a great crop. It's super healthy for you, and it's so versatile. You can cook it or you can use it in salads, and so it's just an awesome crop. Okay, so there you go. That's the trick. Hopefully that helped you guys out. Now, there are a few other crops that you can do the same thing with, okay? So kale, Swiss chard, and tatsoi are all, tatsoi is an Asian green, kind of, it looks a lot like spinach, tastes more like cabbage, but super good. And those are all really hardy, and you can do the exact same thing with those. You can plant them in, 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost, cover them up, and keep them all winter long. And with kale, even in a lot of the colder zones, even down to like zone 5, all you need is a hoop house for that, because kale is like massively hardy. Swiss chard and tatsoi probably need a cold frame to make it through the winter. And then we also have something called mosh. Also, you'll hear it called lamb's lettuce, or corn salad is what it's sometimes called as well. And that is another great crop that you can plant in the fall. You're going to plant it a little bit later, more like 4 weeks before your first frost. And then that will go all the way through the winter as well. So those are all some options for you for growing all through the winter, okay? All right, so I promised you a free course. Year-round gardening mini course is a 45-minute course where we talk more about crops that you can grow. We talk about harvest or planting times for those individual crops, and then we talk a lot more about protection and protecting your crops using those different things. So if you're interested in that course, it's about 45 minutes long. I updated it a little bit this year, and so you can click. That's down in the description, free of charge. All you need to do is sign up. You do have to give me your email. That puts you on my email list. I don't email a ton, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and it's always something garden related or related to a promotion or something that I'm doing. If you're, if you hate my emails, then unsubscribe. You still get the course for free, okay? So just because you came today. So please take advantage of that. Now, how can you become a better year-round gardener? You can join me in the Year-Round Gardening Master Course, which I'm not going to do a hard sell on this today because it's actually not for sale yet. But we do have our Year-Round Gardening Master Course, which is about 5.5 hours of instruction. And it is a fun course. It's my best-selling course. I've had it going for about 6 years now. And every year in the summertime, we do this launch like this, where we really focus hard on year-round gardening. So you get 5.5 hours of recorded instruction. You always will have access to the course. It's an ongoing access, so it's not just during the time that we're really focusing on it. But then for the 4 weeks after you buy the course, we have weekly study guides that we do. We do Q&A sessions, so I do live Q&A sessions. In the past, we've done those on the Facebook group, but now this year we're going to give it a go on a Zoom call, and we'll see how that works. The biggest thing I'm worried about is you get 40 gardeners on a Zoom call, and who knows what's going to happen and how long we'll be. So we'll see how that works. We do those in the Gardening Academy, which is our monthly membership service. We do those every month, and people really have liked the Zoom call option, and so we will do that. So anyways, I jump on and we do 4 Q&A sessions. Then we also have a private Facebook group that you guys can join as well. So really quick, I better turn this off again. Course opens next Tuesday, July 6th, and goes through the 16th. There's more information if you want to sign up for the free year-round gardening course. Then there's more information in that course as well to help you know when things are going to happen. So you can definitely sign up for that free course. Ongoing access to the course is $69. But because you guys have watched this webinar, I'm going to give you a $10 off coupon that will work until July 16th. Okay, so you can save $10. It's only $59. The link is actually for that coupon is actually already down in the description, but it doesn't work yet because the course isn't live. But as soon as the course goes live, that coupon will work and you can use that. Okay, so make sure that you sign up for the free course and then join us for that year-round gardening course, the master course. And if you're on my email list, you'll see a lot more about that coming up. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at questions. It looks like we've got a pretty good list here already. All right, so if you guys want to, again, my assistant is upstairs and she is taking care of these, so if you want to keep adding questions, we can do that as well. The link, sorry, Madeline, the link for the free course is the first one. It's the very first one in the description. The year-round gardening coupon one is down further. So if you want the free course, it's right there at the very beginning. Okay. All right. So let's answer some questions. Number one, can you use grow bags in the colder zones? Zone 5 was the question. And the answer to that is no. You can use grow bags to extend your growing season. So you could definitely plant spinach and other crops in grow bags and extend your growing season later into the fall. So you could do some fall gardening. But winter gardening isn't going to happen in containers because those containers, they're above ground and they're exposed on all sides to the freezing air. And so even if we cover them with a hoop house or fabric row covers or whatever we do, there's just too much exposure. And so the ground freezes solid or the soil freezes solid in those containers. And, unless you, now, if you live in some of the warmer zones, maybe zone 7, zone 8, and zone 9 and 10, obviously you can grow in containers during the wintertime. But for those of us in the really cold areas, containers don't do all that well with winter gardening, okay? Yeah, and you will get forearms like Popeye if you eat your spinach, okay? That was one of the questions. How do we prevent feral cats from getting in your garden? They're digging holes and pooping in them. Pain in the neck. Cats are a pain in the neck. We have 2 or 3 feral cats around in our area. So options that you have, I guess you could, trap them and send them off to your animal control. But the nice thing about feral cats is they keep the rodent population down. And so I'm never going to get rid of the feral cats in our neighborhood because they keep the mice down, and we still kind of live in what used to be rural area that's kind of city-like now, but we still have a old horse pasture behind us, and so we have quite a bit of mice problems. So I'm always going to make sure that I keep those cats around. So ideas to keep the feral cats out. You can look up some ideas. They don't like the smell of pepper, and so you can put pepper on the surface of your soil. Also, I've seen people who will take plastic forks and poke them in backwards so that the fork part is poking out. That kind of discourages the cats as well. Covering the beds with a fabric row cover would help to keep them out as well. So those are all options. But short of capturing them and turning them over to animal control, those are kind of your options. And you might catch your neighbor's cat, and then that would be not a good thing. So those are your kind of your options. And if you go out on Google, there's a few other kind of ideas of things that are out there that you can use. And we don't have a terrible, the cats usually leave our yard alone pretty much. Every once in a while I'll see that they've dug a hole, but you kind of have to live with it. If it's really bad though, then I would try the fork option and putting the pepper down and things like that. Okay. Can you use tulle instead of row cover? So tulle, I'm assuming I'm saying that right, is just kind of the light veil-y stuff that you get like at craft stores and stuff. And the answer to that question is yes, you can use that instead of fabric row cover for pest protection. Okay. It may not be quite as effective. It depends on what the mesh is like. Okay, so if it's a nice tight mesh, then it should be just as effective as row cover. But if it's a looser mesh, then you may still have some aphids or spider mites or things that will get in. It will probably keep out things like leaf miners and grasshoppers and stuff like that. So yes, you can definitely use it. So the light fabric row cover, you can see this piece that I have that had holes in it. Of course, now I can't see the holes. But these last 2 or 3 seasons if you take really good care of them. If they're like on a hoop and they're flapping around in the wind, they'll tear a little faster. But these will usually last 2 or 3 seasons, and they're not terribly expensive. So compare the prices per square foot with the tulle and this. I've never done that, so I don't know for sure which would be the cheapest option. But check it out and choose whichever one is the cheaper option. I would think that the fabric row cover may last a season or so longer. And then the other nice thing about this is as it kind of wears out and gets holes, I can kind of cut those holes and use smaller pieces for different things in the garden. So I'll end up a piece like this may last me 4 or 5 seasons before it finally goes out. Now, the heavy fabric row cover lasts forever. Okay, so this piece that you see right here of heavy fabric row cover, it's filthy. I don't know if you can tell that from the video or not, but it's 12 years old. So I bought this in 2009, the first year I started winter gardening, and it's still in great shape. Okay, I've got one piece that has a hole that got worn in it, but that's because I had a screw that was sticking out on a hoop and cut a hole in it. But of the original 4 pieces of heavy fabric row cover that I bought in 2009, all of them are still in use. So the heavy fabric row cover lasts forever. The light fabric, not quite so much. Do you water on top of the row cover, or do you need to lift it? I would lift it, but you don't have to. Like the rain will go through it and stuff like that. The only reason why I would lift it, on spinach I probably wouldn't care. I could probably water over the top. But if I were, if I had something that was a little taller, when you water it, that fabric row cover is going to get wet and it'll make it heavier, and so that might break some plants off or stuff like that. I use a drip system, so it doesn't matter because the drip system is underneath the fabric row cover anyways. I'm in zone 6B. Can I use grow bags in cold frames to grow kale and lettuce? Thank you. In zone 6, probably not. Those grow bags just, and guys, don't get me wrong, I like grow bags. In fact, this will be kind of cool. In July, I've got a grow bag company that's sponsoring some videos, and so we're actually going to do quite a few videos in July, August, and September on grow bags and growing in fall crops and grow bags and stuff. But the problem with the grow bags is that because they're above ground, even in a cold frame, they're going to freeze faster and harder than the ground will, and that's gonna kill your plants. It just freezes too hard, if that makes sense, and so it's harder to protect. Now, you could definitely use them to extend into the fall, but you're not going to get things to survive in a zone 6 when you get into January and it starts getting down into the single digits. That things are just not going to survive in those in those grow bags. So sorry. When harvesting, do you pick the leaves off or pull the whole plant? With spinach, you pick the leaves off, okay? So it will continue to produce leaves over and over and over again. And so what I will do is I wait until the middle of October, and then I just start with the biggest leaves. And I start picking those big leaves off, and then I come back 3 or 4 days later and pick some more of the biggest leaves off, and I'm constantly just kind of rotating through those big leaves. And you never cut the whole plant off, because spinach, it's not really a cut and come again crop, so if you cut the whole plant off, it's done. But if you just pick the leaves off, then they will continue to grow and give you more leaves, okay? Can you use a mesh row cover initially and then switch to a lighter or heavier fabric row cover as it gets colder? Yes, definitely you can, just like we were talking about with the tulle. The only thing I worry about with the mesh one is whether it's tight enough mesh to keep like aphids out, because aphids usually kind of in the late summer and fall can be a real problem, and you want to make sure that you're able to keep those aphids out. So as long as it's tight enough to keep the aphids out, you should be okay. In a zone 6B, will 5 mil plastic work as a cover? You have a ton of it. Yes, it will. And in zone 8B, you're probably only going to be protecting for a little while. So if I were you, I would throw up a little hoop, a little mini hoop, because it's not going to quite insulate as well as the fabric row cover, and so I might not want the plastic in contact with the plants. So you could maybe just throw up a little mini hoop house made out of some PVC pipe with some rebar or stuck straight into the ground, and then throw that 5 mil plastic over and kind of make a little mini hoop house for your cold time of the year. Because I know you guys will get, in zone 8, you'll get some cold temperatures still, so you could definitely do that, okay? All right, so when do you use light fabric, oh, hang on. How do I keep the water flowing through the hose outside for the watering in the greenhouse in the wintertime? You can't. If you live in a cold area, you're going to end up not being able to do that. The only way you can do that is to bring the hose inside every time you use it. But you shouldn't be needing to do a lot of watering. So I don't water from about mid-November until mid-February. You just don't need to water because your crops are kind of just in cold storage that time of year, and so they don't need water, and there's enough moisture kind of late in the air, and the plants are pretty much dormant anyways, and so you really don't need to do a lot of watering. But to keep a hose going, the only way you're going to be able to do that is to take it out, then drain it after you've used it, and bring it inside somewhere, a garage or something like that, to keep it from freezing. When do you use lightweight fabric compared to the heavy fabric row covers? So I only use the light fabric row covers when I'm desperate for frost protection. So if I don't have enough enough of the heavy frost blankets to cover everything, or I will use the light fabric row cover for pest protection, and then I use the heavy when it gets colder. Okay, so the light fabric row cover will give you 2 or 3 degrees worth of frost protection. So if you've got a night where you're just worried that it might be frosty, then you could use the light fabric row cover. But for the most part, when I'm trying to protect from frost, I'll use the heavy stuff. And then you're going to use the light stuff as a pest protector. Okay. I have heard that you can use painter's plastic on your hoop house instead of heavy fabric row cover for the cold regions, zone 5. My thoughts? Yes, absolutely. That's what that hoop house that you saw back in the pictures, that was actually plastic. It's a 5 mil, maybe even a 4 mil painter's plastic that I use to cover the hoop house. So for the winter time, you're going to use the plastic. If we're just talking again pest protection and stuff like that, I will use the heavy fabric row cover for that. Or in the warmer zones, you might, like zone 7, maybe even zone 6, you might be able to get away with making your hoop out of the heavy fabric row cover. But for the colder places, you want to use that, painter's plastic so that you can keep the cold air out. What about cabbage, turnips, mustard greens? Can they be planted the same as spinach? Mustard greens, yes, they're not as hardy. Cabbage and turnips, no. Turnips will last well into the winter, but they're not going to go all the way through the winter, and then cabbage won't hold up. It won't hold up all the way through the winter, so no on the cabbage. Okay. What variety of spinach do I plant? Sorry, I meant to actually say that in the presentation. I should have put it on one of the slides. I plant a variety called Bloomingdale Longstanding. Okay, or sometimes it's just called Bloomsdale. And that's a super good variety. That one is an heirloom variety, so you could save seeds if you wanted to. Saving seeds on spinach is a little problematic, but you definitely could save those seeds if you wanted to. But I have also used a hybrid variety called Melody, and that one was a really nice one too. We liked that one a lot, and it did really well for us. I bought a big package of those seeds, and so it lasted for a couple of years. But I switched because I wanted to have an heirloom variety that I was growing. So mine is called, again, Bloomingsdale Longstanding. Okay? And obviously direct seeding in the garden beds, yes. I don't like transplanting spinach. It doesn't do super well. Spinach has a really long tap root. Same with Swiss chard and dandelion, if you're interested in growing the dandelion. They have a long tap root, and those tap roots don't transplant really well. So I always plant spinach directly into the garden. You can do it, but they just don't recover quite as well. Okay? All right, and then we are at 48 minutes, so we're going to call it after this last question. I am in New Jersey, Zone 7A. I just pulled out my bolted greens. What can I plant for a quick crop until mid-August? So, quick crop, beets. You could probably do some beets and have them ready, in 6 weeks or so. You could look at some of the summer crisp lettuce varieties. So you look for varieties like Magenta or Nevada or Muir, spelled M-U-I-R, I think is what it is. They're called summer crisp lettuces, and they'll hold up to the heat a lot better. As long as your heat isn't like 100+ degrees for a long time, those lettuces would hold up, and they would be ready in about 6 weeks. Beyond that, with only about 6 weeks, that's probably about it. Beets, turnips, it's probably not. It's probably not cool enough. So, and radishes, it wouldn't be cool enough. They don't like the heat. So yeah, that would probably be about it. You could do some kale and just grow it to a baby stage, but it's not going to be super tasty this time of year. Kale is a little bit on the bitter side when it's in the summer heat. So, but if you're okay with bitter kale, you could definitely do that. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I think we are going to call it there because we are at 50 minutes now. Thank you guys. I saw we had close to 100 people here, so another great session. And we are going to do a replay, so it'll be available for replay for a little bit. And don't forget that the special on the course, the master course, ends on July 16th. So it'll be for sale starting on July 6th and go through the 16th. And if you want the free course, the link is down below. Okay? All right, so I do have several more of these workshops planned. I'm not 100% sure what's going on next week. I was going to do something on Friday, and then I realized I'm actually out of town on Friday. I'm going to be out of town with my kids at a camp. So I'll let you guys know Monday whether we are going to do something next week in the way of a workshop. I might do something on Saturday the 10th. We'll see. So I'll let you know. But you guys should be aware that on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of July, so the following week, I'm going to do a webinar like this or a workshop like this every day on those days. So we're going to do one on crops that you can grow for year-round gardening, when you should be planting, and protection. So we'll do individual ones on each of those, kind of like what we have on the year-round gardening mini course. So if you're interested in that, those will be again the 13th, 14th, and 15th of July. So a lot of fun stuff coming up, and then we'll kind of kick back into our regular YouTube routine of a weekly video. And like I say, we are going to focus a lot on grow bags over the next 6 to 8 weeks as we talk about using grow bags for midsummer plantings, and then we're going to talk about using grow bags for fall plantings as well. So, okay, all right. Thank you guys again for coming and being here, and had a great crowd again, and thank you for all your questions, and appreciate everything you guys do for me. Okay, thanks. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go follow us on Instagram. Thanks, guys. Happy gardening. See you later.